Hi there, and welcome to the podcast Life as a show intently focused on helping people find their professional pathway by exploring and unearthing the details of jobs from around the world. I'm your host, Christopher Schoenwald. Advertising. What a word. What a concept. And to some, it has become somewhat convoluted in that it is becoming increasingly more challenging to not only distinguish it, but even understand it. Setting aside that thought, advertising is also known to represent so much more. Think creativity, innovation, driver of growth, and dare I say, it has become an integral piece of the engine which powers our way of life and living and culture. Now, like most industries operating within the 21st century, advertising has also seemingly transformed itself. Traditional mediums, namely print, radio, and TV, are no longer a catch-all solution capable of reaching all target markets. The channels now are wide and diverse. Take Gen Z or millennials. The thought of trying to reach them via a radio spot or a newspaper ad is pretty much laughable. And if you're a brand targeting youth segments, you have to leverage tech and enter into worlds where you may have never been. And that is exactly what has been transpiring. Enter the world of social media and influencer marketing. Today, I have a guest who helps bring these seemingly divergent worlds of youth and brands together. And he'll take us in behind the curtain to get a better understanding of what it's all about. Rish Gopal is the global head of social media and influencer marketing for the Publicis Group, one of the oldest and largest marketing and communication companies in the world. To describe Rish, you'd have to include the following: passionate marketer, writer, entrepreneurial, and in his words, a wannabe actor. A creative by heart with a naturally curious mind, inclined for strategy, Rish acquired data and analytics experience to possess the trifecta of skills every digital social lead should have: strategy, creative, and data-centric. Rish brings with him 13 plus years experience of creating and implementing digital first strategies for FMCG, fast moving consumer goods, hospitality, food and beverage, technology, automotive, beauty, and telecommunication brands. Rish currently leads content and social media at Publicis Japan for global and local brands, ensuring that the agency's strategy and approach in today's platform-driven world is tailored to direct business results without sacrificing the customer experience or brand standards his clients strive for. Rish joined Publicis from Singapore, where he worked as a global strategic social lead for social bakers. His role required of him to be a tactician and strategic social thinker for brands like Lexus, Lenovo, Asus, Shangri-La, Oppo, Sony, and more, especially when it came to providing them with technological solutions to solve some of their most challenging business problems. Now, previous to Social Bakers, Rish worked as a global strategic social partner for Ogilvy, working and mentoring global, regional, and local teams across APAC, the EU, UK, and the Americas. Apart from Unilever, his portfolio of brands included BMW, IHG, Guinness, Singtel, UN, Electrolux, and others. He was also fortunate enough to be part of the core team that won Cannes Lions, AMEs, and Campaign Asia awards. Now, on an off day, you might find Rish exploring the bustling streets of Tokyo, looking for some of the coolest izakayas in town. And with that stated, Rish, it's my honor to welcome you to the show. Yeah.
No, thank you so much. All I got from that was wannabe actor, and that dream still prevails. So this is my one way of I hope I act well so that people can at least hire me for the wrong reasons.
Well, there we go. Yeah. All right. Yeah, that is a question on my list of ones to cover into this. I want to know a little bit more about that. But before we do, maybe we can head into a few other questions first. And I would like to go into our first segment, actually, something called Coloring Wikipedia, which is a segment where I just basically read off a definition of the guest profession. I mean, as my listeners would know, I like to do it for a few reasons. One, it kind of brings everybody up to speed. And then also too, I think it kind of offers this nice jumping off point into exploring the profession. I mean, every time a guest comes on, they have their own sort of vision and their own sort of like stamp on what they do, which could be completely different than somebody who's holding the exact same position. I mean, a
Yeah.
job sort of becomes personalized eventually.
Yeah.
So with that stated, I mean, I have you down here, surprise, surprise, as an influencer marketing professional. So let me just read that off what Wikipedia's got you down for. And then after that,
Sure.
within the context of what you do, you can comment. Sound good?
Yep. Awesome.
All right, well, here we go. It's a bit of a mouthful. I'm going to forewarn you here. So, all right.
No worries.
Yeah, influencer marketers. Okay, influencer marketers derive their duties from a form of social media marketing involving endorsements and product placement from influencers, people, and organizations who have purported expert level of knowledge or social influence in their field. Influencers are someone or something with the power to affect the buying habits or quantifiable actions of others by uploading some form of original, often sponsored content to social media platforms like Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, or other online channels. Influencer marketing is when a brand enrolls influencers who have an established credibility and audience on social media platforms to discuss or mention the brand in a social media post. Influencer content may be framed as testimonial advertising. I wasn't lying when I said it was a bit of a mouthful. So anyway, Rich, what do you think of this? I mean, yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, but yeah, well, thoughts?
Yeah, I've never dove into the definition of the dictionary, so to say.
Yeah.
Well, dictionary or the definition itself. But I mean, I kind of see it very simply. Anyone or someone who affects or changes the way people behave is an influencer of some sorts. Technically, anyone who influences a behavior, and I say that because, for example, there's someone on social media that is a travel blogger. They influence you to make different travel choices.
Right.
Your hairstylist influences you to cut your hair because they know all the latest trends going on in hair. My cousin Shraddha, and she, shout out to her, but she was a Miss India winner and Miss India Miss Universe in 2017. And she's got a great taste in fashion, and she's an athlete almost, and she influences like me and a lot of other people on how to be fit on a daily basis and look fantastic at the same time. Or your family doctor in that way, or anyone who is like your news anchor. All of these people technically are influencers, but I think they're all different kinds of influencers almost. Because like one is the digital, your travel influencer that I was talking about, travel blogger, is your penultimate digital influencer. Like there are travel bloggers, beauty bloggers, food critiques. Like they're all your proper digital influencers who've obviously changed the world of social media in a lot of ways. Then you have your professionals, or also what we call like KOLs, which is key opinion leaders. And professionals are like, your hairstylist is a professional, and he obviously we live in Japan. There's hair salons everywhere. Yeah. So a lot of them actually have great social media presence that I actually follow. The key opinion leaders are like the doctors who actually have experts in their own field, and they become some kind of an influencer as well. And then your family is a peer. So they could have a following, but they have sometimes they're a super nano, like nano means 200, 400, 500 followers. Yeah. But then you also have the big guys towards the end, which is like your news anchors, celebrities essentially. So Kim Kardashian, the ultimate, or Paris Hilton, the number one, but Kim Kardashian is like one of the biggest at least. Or I'm a big fan of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, and everyone that I know knows about it, and they hate the fact that I mentioned him. I mentioned it in every single meeting, or I mentioned it here. But they are a media celebrity. Yeah. But they're all some kind of an influencer at the end of the day, and I agree with the definition, although it was fairly a mouthful. But anyone who can affect any kind of change in people's behavior is an influencer of some sorts. Now, how real are they? How authentic are they? It depends on that person and how they are. Yeah. Sorry, it was a long answer.
No. But I think it was, it was straight to the point though, too. I mean, I think Wikipedia should be having a chat with you. I mean, they could simplify that definition. I mean,
I
make
can
it a
change it
lot easier
myself,
on people.
actually.
Yeah. If, I don't know, is there anything you would like to add to the definition? I mean, you kind of simplified it, but would there be anything else that?
I mean, for me, it's I think it's like influencer marketing. When we talk about influencer marketing, the word marketing itself makes it a little unauthentic at times.
Hmm.
It's an influencer content, and influencers are people, very simply put, whose content that we watch. When I was listening to, actually, I was listening to a podcast recently, and there was a debate going on at that time. Someone said that Netflix is dead, and they're like, "Why? Why is Netflix dead?" He's like, "Well, Netflix just paid $100 million to some fancy writer and got a show made for 2 hours. We sit here on YouTube between doing a podcast between two fairly famous podcasters, and YouTube pays us zero money in it, and we get more people to watch us because we do this every single day. Whereas
Hmm.
Netflix, you watch it once and you're done with that show.
Hmm.
So the value of that influencer content, the value of that content is much more
Yeah.
than brand content, and that's why I think I like I call it influencer marketing because it is what it is. But at the end of the day, it is creative partnerships or almost brand endorsements, so to say, that these people are doing. So I'm going into the weeds right now, but
No, but that's
it's
cool
very
though.
difficult
Yeah.
to put like one line onto it. So there's so much going on with that kind of
Yeah.
creator mentality.
Yeah, and that's a fine distinction, what you just kind of outlined there too. I mean, that yeah, it certainly is. No, thanks for sharing that. I'm glad that you did. I mean, I think that was one of the very first gems of this conversation. Quite frankly, is kind of understanding that and then that difference there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if you have to stop me at times because I can keep going.
Okay, well, let's hop into a few more questions. Maybe we can uncover a bit more.
Yeah.
This first question, we're heading into a Q&A discovery where I do have some questions lined up for you. And off the top, I mean, I did know, you've had some pretty wide and varied experiences, not only within Japan, you were in Singapore, within this realm, but I'm curious about getting into this field of, you know, influencer marketing. Essentially, was this something that you were angling for, or were you approached by this, or did you need some cajoling or convincing to get into it? Like what was that like for you?
Well, I mean, honestly, like I've been working for a while. I mean, for some people, a lot of years, some people not so many years. But I think, like, essentially, social media started around 2008, 2010. But it really, like, even today, I don't think today we need a lot more convincing. But I kind of really got into the social media, working in social media in 2012 or so,
Okay.
when a lot of brands really started investing a lot more, and social media became a media business and not just a platform that people come and chill.
Yeah.
But if you are if you're working within the social media realm, you automatically are part of the influencer realm as well, because these influencers are creating content on social. And back in the day when there were no influencers in today's definition, so to
Yeah.
say, there were celebrities, and you still had your hairstylist, you still had your, I mean, in India we say the auntie from the next block who knows everything about everyone and tells everything about everyone to everyone.
Yeah.
But fundamentally, I think if you're in the social media world, if you're in the content world, the creative world, advertising world, influencer, you are automatically
Yeah.
invited into the influencer world. Because today, if you're not working with influencers, you're not working with brand partners or creators, essentially, then I think you're already like far
Behind.
behind, and almost like start doing it now. And I think majority of the marketers that I know of, data that I saw, like 70% of the marketers around the world actually find it useful to work with influencers. But again, I mean, that question, that there might be other variations to that question, because I feel like if you're in marketing, you see the value that influencer marketing brings to you.
So was it? I don't know if I'm taking this the right way. Was it a strategic sort of decision for you because you could see the tea leaves, like this is where the industry is going, so I really have to align myself. I have to get in early, or was it like what I'm trying to get at here?
Yeah.
Is it something that you were just attracted to and like you found it fascinating right away, or?
Yeah. I mean, maybe it's the wannabe actor in me that if I couldn't be in front of the camera, be behind it. But no, I think jokes apart, I think I kind of just got into it without a question, because I was already doing social media, and I was on the platforms, of course, and I thought that's how most of us started. And then you kind of start creating content, and everything was kind of new. Even today, sometimes I feel everything is still new, but I think it was the need of the hour. Like, I think as a brand today, or even yesterday, we're always trying to think about like, what other things can we do? What more could we do? How could we do it more differently? How could we be more authentic? How could we be part of that conversation? Or if you're a much cooler brand, how can we start a conversation?
Yeah.
And I think within those questions, influencer marketing just kind of came in, and it's something that we went in and pitched and kind of started doing it. And this was obviously a while back, because I think when we started doing my first influencer gig, to be all honest, it was I used to be a community manager back in the day, talking like a 20-something-year-old, talking to moms, giving them advice on how to essentially raise their kids. But obviously, I'm not qualified for that. I wasn't really telling them how to raise their kids, but my job was to advise how they can get their kids to go out there and play and do different activities and just be a friend, so to say. And I think the first set of influencers that I worked with were moms, soccer moms, essentially. They don't really call soccer moms in Asia, at least, but just moms who had an influence. And we did a whole campaign with them, something that again, it translates differently in a different language, but something which is like games that were approved by moms. And I think it was really like talking to them and getting them to work with us as almost like one team, because as a brand, we were talking to moms. And if you're talking to moms, don't try to, like similar as me as a community manager, don't try to be something that you're not. Try to learn from them and understand them, and then kind of work with them, because that's what authenticity is about. And that's what kind of got...
being genuine, right? And having that authentic relationship. And that's what, like in a relationship with just two people on the street, that's what you're always striving for. And obviously with brands, they recognize that too. And they need to, well, most brands, I shouldn't say all, but most brands, or good brands at least, recognize the fact that that's a really critical element to developing long-lasting relationships. So yeah.
And I honestly just stumbled into it more than anything else, because I was still a little junior, but I was working with a really lovely pair of lovely bunch of leaders as well. But I think as we spoke more and more, we're like, let's choose real people. Like, I think like we were just like, it's not just celebrities, it's just like constant the same thing. And then I realized very early on that, working with celebrities, okay, it's great, get to meet the celebrity. Sometimes they're disappointing, sometimes they are not. But you're reaching a wide variety of audience. Whereas a mom, in a lot of ways that we were trying to work with, was being followed by other moms because she was an expert in something, or she had a new way of taking care of her children, or like a new or fresh advice on certain things. And these are the people who are really what we call, and I still call them, community influencers, because they are inspiring a community. They're not just a generic one size fits all kind of influencer. And I think that's what kind of attracted me towards it, because it was really cool to understand from them like who their audience is. And I've kind of not stopped from there.
Okay. Well, I like the example that you gave as well, because I think like nowadays I would venture to guess, I couldn't say for certain, but I would venture to guess that when people think of a social influencer, they're thinking of maybe like a Kardashian, or they're thinking of like a YouTuber who's like a gamer, or they're thinking of like somebody like a travel, blogger. Like there's like this narrow definition, probably like 4 or 5 different types of social influencers, but that spectrum is quite large. And the example that you gave, I mean, certainly fits into all of that, but it's probably not the very first thing that people would consider necessarily, if you follow what I'm saying.
No, absolutely. I mean, we talk about this a lot at work, where today everything is about this, and it's not like a like button, guys. It's just a thumb I'm talking about, and it's all about, we call it thumb stopping content. So they say that the attention span of humans is less than a goldfish now. And a goldfish's attention is 9 seconds. A new study said that humans, people's attention span is like 7 seconds now. But I'm just like, if you really think about it, it takes less than a second to do 2 swipes. So if I'm scrolling through my Instagram, Facebook, or scrolling right for dating apps, but your brand, for example, really doesn't have time to stand out that easily. But you would stop for real content from someone you actually follow, like an influencer, like a friend, like Chris. If I follow you on Instagram, sorry, I should say I follow you on Instagram.
Good correction.
But if I'm scrolling through the feed and I see Chris has posted something, I'll pause and I'll see what's going on. Or if I go into your stories, I'll look at the stories. But if it's just a brand, I'm just like, okay, swipe right.
Yeah.
So I think that's not swipe right, swipe up. But well, it depends on the platform, swipe right, swipe up. But it's confusing. But I think that's where authenticity and like real content comes in, and the value of influencers makes so much difference there.
Yeah, I would have to agree. I mean, even from my own experience from time to time, I think like now the consumer is that much more discerning, and they know when they're being sold to, and they're just not going to flat out accept like an old CM version, like where it's just, just contrived, and it's not real, right? People strive to have these genuine interactions, and they're getting tougher to find these days. I mean, people are busy. They've got a lot of things going on. I think people as a whole are busier than we've ever been. And we have all these other distractions, like you just said, like smartphones and everything else, right? So, I mean, like when you are able to achieve these sort of like real, again, I keep using this word, genuine sort of interactions with a person or with a brand or whatever it might be, there is value in that. And it sticks with you in a little bit, in a different way. So no, well said. Well, I do want to kind of return to that Wikipedia definition a little bit here. There was something else when I was researching that I found quite compelling, quite frankly. And again, forewarn you once again, it's a bit of a mouthful, but I do think there is something here that would be fun to explore with you. So let me just read off this. This is an extension of that first definition. All right. So here goes. There's a lack of consensus about what an influencer is. One writer defines them as a range of third parties who exercise influence over the organization and its potential customers. Another defines an influencer as a third party who significantly shapes the customer's purchasing decision, but may never be accountable for it. According to another, influencers are well connected, create an impact, have active minds, and are trendsetters. And just because an individual has many followers does not necessarily mean they have much influence over those individuals, only that they have many followers. So to me, it just sounds like there's so many different ideas and definitions of what, an influencer is and what their role is, how much power they have. It just seems like a big mishmash of ideas. But for somebody who's working within the industry and has been for quite some time, what do you think about all that?
I mean, I think one of the things that I spoke about, and I won't dive too much into it, was the community influencers. So I think the power that they bring, that they are really influencing a community of people. I think they have immense power, and working with these kind of people and majority of these kind of people collectively on a constant basis. And I say constant basis because brands tend to work with influencer once and like, okay, cool, bye. I'm never going to see you again. But you want the influencer to really like you and use your product. So I almost want to keep working with this guy on a consistent basis so that it's almost like my brand's product is normalized in the consumer's mind. Because as we said, the consumer knows when you're kind of bullshitting or when it's an ad and when it's a genuine kind of thing. So even if an influencer is making content, and if your product is just lying at the back, or like, for example, if it's an orange juice, I'm just still drinking the orange juice, it means that this is part of my lifestyle, right? In a lot of ways. But I think coming back to the definition, and I think there's the last line that you mentioned, that just because you have a lot of followers, you might not necessarily be an influencer. That is absolutely right. And I think a simpler answer or a simpler way of thinking about this, and like, it's just one word: data. It really, really depends on the data, because becoming an influencer is a tough job. It's not easy, but it's also buying followers is also a very common tactic for a lot of different people. So a lot of people invest in becoming an influencer, Then they then just buy followers consistently, try to put ads on it, and then eventually they reach a good status of 50,000. Or at times for certain platforms, they also have, like, there's also fake followers. And I think there are companies who do those kinds of things as well, which I would not actually know about. Like, don't know a specific company like that, but I know that there are people who do, yeah. And I think the answer becomes data, because what we do, at least, and I'm at least part of my team, and what we do, at least at our company, is that whenever we work with an influencer, we really look at the backend data of them. So we have tools that we actually use. We do social listening. So social listening is very, like, you have to go into a definition of social listening. It's a whole separate podcast right there. But social listening, I mean, very simply put, it's about doing the right kind of research about the particular influencer or influencers that you want to work with. So I want to make sure as a brand that this influencer hasn't gotten into too many controversies, or hasn't really got, like, hasn't had like, just like who this person is, what's their perception, what's people's sentiment around it. So kind of just doing your basic research. Kind of like when you go on a date and just kind of like want to know, like, who this person is, right?
Right.
But then the other aspect of data is also like really looking at their own followers. So there are tools out there which are for the listeners. There's also free tools where you can actually plot in someone's page, and you could potentially find out, like, where their followers are from. There are paid tools that actually tell you, are their followers fake, are their followers legit? Because again, and it's not illegal, because it's an open, like, a lot of the platforms actually have their APIs open to these tools. So you're able to get that data properly. And we look at like the kind of people that they are reaching, their credibility, the frequency that they post, how authentic is their content, how many brands. So there's like multiple things that we actually look at. And before choosing one influencer, and even if this person is like a really small influencer or a big influencer, but, like, it's important to kind of really look at data as well, because you want to make sure, and I'm sorry, I'm going to give you a very long-winded answer here.
No, it's great. Yeah.
But you want to make sure that you're partnering with the right person when you are a brand. But at the same time, as an influencer, it's a two-way street here. So the influencer should also choose the right kind of brands for them. Don't choose a brand just because someone's coming. It's kind of, someone says, like, when you don't get the first job that that someone's offering you if you know that you're good, right? Wait for the right offer to come to you as well. But in the same way with the influencers, like, you can work with many brands and make a lot of money, or we can work with selected brands and do the right kind of content for them. Because if you do the right kind of content for them, the others will just come in, because they're like, oh, this is it's not a huge industry. It's like a lot of people do know each other. A lot of influencers do know each other as well. But I think it's important to really, coming back to the data, I think we look at data a lot. And I and my team, we have rejected so many influencers at times, because we just know that, okay, they've had fake followers. Or sometimes we've actually worked with influencers, found out later on that, because the tool then later on does a proper, like, we keep studying their data again and again, and we find out later on that they have had fake followers, or they have suddenly grown, since we last worked with them, suddenly grown by like 30,000 followers over 3 months. And I was like, unless they did something really drastically different, it's not going to happen. So anything that is fishy, that's why we look at quantitative data, qualitative data, and then decide, okay, is this the right brand that our clients would like to work for? Sorry, is this the right person that our clients would like to work for? But also, I think influencers have come to us as well, like, sorry, I don't want to be associated with this brand. And I'm like, okay, fine. I think it's a fair point, because similar to brands trying to find the right influencers are also starting to realize that I don't need to work with this brand, because people are more powerful than brands today. Previously it used to be all, people previously used to be all like, oh, the brands are super powerful, and then, like, people kind of follow them, etc. But now the brands are looking for validation, like, oh, please come, like, talk to
Yeah,
me.
and
I want
it's
to
almost
be. I
like that
want to.
pendulum is sort of shifted, like the power is kind of shifting more away from the brand to some of these
Yeah,
influencers, it sounds like. The ones that are genuine and pure and right. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
Huh.
So,
That's
but
really interesting, actually.
yeah,
Hmm.
but it's interesting because like I think the industry is evolving so much. There's so much data that you can kind of look at in terms of these things, and I think that's why the definition of influencers is consistently changing. Well,
Yeah.
I wouldn't even just say the definition. It's like social media, content, creativity. Everything is changing so
Yeah.
much.
That's probably why,
It's
right? It's a reflection of all of that, isn't it?
yeah, absolutely. It's just too much information, but then you need to categorize that information properly so that you can
Yeah.
use it well.
Yeah. It must be interesting too. Like even over the last, I don't know, 3, 5, 7, 8 years, just what you're explaining and how a brand would go about evaluating an influencer and the tools available. All of that has probably shifted and changed dramatically as well as technology's improved, as all of these things. And then, like you
Yeah,
said, influencers themselves evaluating brands, probably for them 5 years ago, even less than that. Like their end goal was to align with a strong brand, and now now it's kind of like we just talked about, that pendulum is shifting a little bit from time to time, where yeah, maybe it's more the brand that's begging to get that influencer out. It's
yeah, and I mean, there's like there's the idea of like this what we call public data and private data. So whatever you get from these tools is public data, just openly
yeah.
available. But everyone can see, like I can see my own public data. Obviously, not everyone can see my public data because you need to have access to my pages unless I am on someone's tool and they're trying to get me as an influencer or an actor. But but I think it's like even influencers actually like regular people like us, like we know what, like I feel like I think I heard recently, like some of my friends, like I've reached this many number of people,
Mm.
or they understand what organic means, and like and it's terms that I use on a daily basis. I mean, again, it's not like these are extremely difficult to understand words.
Yeah.
Like it's not rocket science, but it's almost become part of our vocabulary
Mm.
because we all live and breathe this on a daily basis, even if they don't work in the business.
Yeah, well, it makes sense. I mean, all of us have those phones in hand probably what, I don't know, 50, 60, 70% of the day, it's always there. So it probably makes sense that we're picking up the vernacular associated with all of it. Yeah, it doesn't come as much of a surprise, but I guess all the same, if you sit back and reflect on it and think 5,
Yeah,
10 years back, like, yeah, it's drastically different, right? Drastically different.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. I
absolutely.
got another question here lined up in terms of this dynamic between brands and influencers, which when I was thinking about this talk, in advance for it and prepping for it a little bit, I thought this would be kind of an interesting question for you. Whereas, like I think in the past, we spoke to this already, like maybe some of the influencers would have been considered, say, like in the celebrity realm, right?
Hmm.
Like way back, like 20, 30 years ago, even like commercials or magazine ads, right? And
Yeah,
those people in those times, like celebrities, have always been conscious of their image because it's a business for them as well. And of
yeah,
course, brands themselves are hyper conscious of all of this. So it seems like a bit of a match made in heaven. They both kind of understand one another in that sense.
yeah,
Whereas now with influencers coming along, some of these influencers are, the ones that are, say, within these traditional sort of channels, like the one we're speaking of, maybe within gaming or travel or these food bloggers, the ones that are really exploding, they're coming out of nowhere and seemingly like wielding power overnight. And the
yeah,
interesting thing with that is that some of them probably are a little bit less polished than what brands are used to working with, and that must
yeah,
create some interesting dynamics, like between, for somebody like yourself who's got to manage that at times and manage
yeah.
expectations on both sides. Like what is that like?
I mean, it's not easy. It's not easy because you're right. Like brands want to be like, I want my content to
They
look
want to
like
control.
like
Yeah.
yeah, it's like it's super polished and super nice. And uh, I think, I mean, I've had so many conversations, and honestly, the conversations have gotten much better today because I think they understand the logic behind it. Because I think you need to understand, like again, going back to the word that you said, genuine content, authentic content as well, and then you have to realize your brand content is your brand content. And like, yes, there people also have a certain expectation from you, but people have a different expectation from the influencer. Now, if I suddenly, let's say, like as I said, my cousin's an influencer, and if I give her a product to work with, and she does, like I literally tell her, like, listen, you don't need to worry about anything. I'll create the content for you. You come in, we'll do a nice shoot, and we'll put it up. Perfect. Okay, fine. It works, and it's a proper ad. But if she's doing something which she's supposed to create content, which is not something her audiences are used to, the audiences are there following this person because they like their content the way it is.
Yeah.
And that's the explanation that we have to give clients as well, because like, let them do their thing. Don't, like, I think the idea is it's all like people follow them because of who they are and what they do and how they do it. Now, if you want to change that, then
it's getting risky.
It's getting unless you change it dramatically. I don't remember the name of the influencer, but there's a influencer in the UK, and this person is a TikToker and an Instagrammer who essentially is a train enthusiast. And he just like goes to the train station every day and just gets excited looking at the different trains. He knows the mod number, looks at the speed, gets like super pumped when the rare train is coming out or is coming out of the woodwork or something like that. And that's what he does on a weekly basis. And surprisingly, like, obviously his quality of videos are like just a handheld iPhone, nothing fancy, like a simple piece of content. But surprisingly, a brand like North Face and Gucci partnered with him, and they did the collaboration together. They actually got him into the ad of like, then this was like a proper ad where he was dressed up in North Face Gucci attire, and the whole thing was shot at a train station, and you suddenly see him there. But it works because it's shot in a train station. He is the train guy. So it is so relevant to use him and put him in that situation, because people realize like, man, like he's a celebrity and we've always following him and we're happy for him in a lot of way. But if he was asked, like if he, like, and he's generally wearing, UK is cold, so he's generally wearing a sweater, like a simple shirt and pants. And now suddenly he comes in wearing street style on like, on his videos. You're just like, did he just sell out? Or like, so there has to be a resonance, there has to be a relevance. And there has to be a certain amount of match as well, because it is important. Like the kind of content that this person is doing needs to match the brand in some ways. Quality will differ, but as long as this person is right for the brand, the rest is fine. Because influencers are just people, and brands, people don't trust brands, people trust people, and brands are also people in a lot of ways because it's run by people like us. So I personally, the people that I don't want to work with is that there was a bunch of influencers who just like, they put every product here, like, look at this beautiful product. I was like, no, I don't want to see the product next to your face. I want to see you consuming that product. I want to see you using that product. And that's where I think in the initial definition you said influencer marketing is a lot about testimonial content. And in a lot of ways it is. It's about users giving their honest opinions or just using that product on a day-to-day basis. Now the question is, do you lie about it? That part, it really depends. Some people lie, some people don't. But at the end of the day, brands have to understand more than the influencers that find the right influencer for you, the right influencer who does the right type of content, not the right quality of content. And I think that's what matters the most.
Okay. Yeah. No, it's really interesting. I'm really enjoying this conversation thus far. I feel like, it's interesting in the sense that like when I came into this and even researching it, I felt, just again, having a smartphone in hand most of the day and just being on some of these platforms, you have a handle on it, you have an idea. But what you're sharing now and in this course of this conversation is like some of these finer distinctions which really make all the difference. And it's kind of getting into the mind of how a brand might think, but also how an influencer might think about all these different elements. It's really quite compelling, really fascinating stuff.
I mean, I try to listen to both sides, or obviously I listen to the brand side more, but I think I always say this as a joke, but like I'm in marketing because I'm a sucker for marketing. So majority of my, like on Instagram, for example, I'm just consistently looking. I follow so many Japanese influencers, so people, influencers from all over the world, because I genuinely enjoy their content. I don't follow as many brands, except all the brands that I work with, because we do fantastic content.
I like that.
But yeah, but shameless plug, of course. But I think like I follow them because you learn a lot from these people, because they are the ones who are at the forefront of what's new, what's up there, and like what's culturally relevant in that way.
Well,
And I
they're
think,
tapping into something to be able to achieve, right? I mean, if they're
yeah,
the ones that are, you know, getting high follower counts, that they're influencing decisions and whatnot, they figured something out along the way.
yeah.
They've built their brand in the right way. And when there's something to be taken away from that, I guess, in studying it, for one, and then two, there must be a level of enjoyment if you're already sort of drawn to that in the first place. So yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, and they have an opinion. I think that's at the end of the day what I feel
Yeah.
like it's important is because if this person has no opinion on anything and is just someone who wants to work for brands because they have some sort of an influence on something, then I mean, an opinion is not about, sorry, right, just to elaborate, opinion is not about like having an opinion from a political perspective or in any other, just having a point of view is what I mean. Like, you know, even doing outfit of the day, it's a point of view. This is my outfit of the day, and I chose this because this is my style.
Yeah.
That's an opinion piece. That's a point of view, and I think that's all I, as someone who works in this field, looks at, because that means this person has some kind of a personality in some way. And I think majority of the people that are there on Instagram, I would like to believe majority of the people have a certain type of their own personality. But I think for brands that it's not something that it pops up because the numbers would speak for themselves. Because at the end of the day, it comes down to data. And then it comes down to, which is the last thing, a gut feeling. Like, do I think that this guy works? Probably does.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I do have one last question in this segment, and you might be pleased with this one. We're going to dive into that bio information I read off as an aspiring, I guess, writer. You have an entrepreneurial side and this wannabe actor thing, as what you said, not what I'm saying. This is what you said here. But maybe you could fill listeners in a little bit on this. And here's my question with this little add-on: were some of these elements did they derive from you working within this field of like social influencer marketing, or is this like something completely different?
Oh, is the actor thing you're talking about?
I guess all that, being a writer, this entrepreneur side, all of that.
I think the writer and the actor bit, it's just, I mean, I can kind of say, like, if you're an Indian, almost like we grew up watching Bollywood films, and like, we love dancing, we love like singing songs, and not just in the shower, we just sing it on the street, we don't care. And it's just something that it's naturally there. And like, because you grew up thinking about a lot of these things, and I should take part in school dramas, and we have the word called natak, which means drama. But natak can also be used as a regular word, like, oh, you're doing too much drama, you're doing too much natak. But it's like in my family, like, we're all almost like born actors and who do natak all the time. Just like, as if like, if my mom just hits me like this, I'm just like, oh my God, it hurts so much. But that's a regular day in the Gopal household. And I think it kind of stemmed from there. And I think that's just kind of, I think my first, one of my first or second gig that I was doing was working for a production house in Bombay. And I was working with this like really famous actor at that time, and the director at that time, and I was a production assistant. And like, the director is like, hey, I want you to get into one of those, because I was like coordinating everything, the clothes and everything. Super, looks very glamorous. It wasn't. Like you had to wake up really early and end really, really late, or you're drenched half the time because if it's raining. But the director's like, come, and I want to sorry, I was literally translating Hindi, but come and sit in this rickshaw, and I want your feet to be outside, just to kind of show like as if like the driver is just chilling and sleeping there. And I was just happy that my feet were in the ad. And then when they cut me out because the cut was too long, I was like, God damn it, the feet were acting so well.
I had the right placement and everything. Come on.
It was the right placement. It was like the right like tap. The feet were like just chilling there. But I mean, it's just something that has been there. I think writing kind of came in very naturally because I was kind of studying advertising, and I grew up singing jingles from ads, and like one of my friends and we just watched a lot of movies, and we were like, you know what, like let's just do it. Let's write something. And then we actually got a gig that someone said like, hey, you write a script, and then this is the summary of what, like, it was almost like, if I can say it today, but it's like Starsky and Hutch meets Miami Vice. And I was like, perfect, not seen both the movies, let's watch the movies first. And then we spent like the next 4 or 5 months just chilling in like each other's houses and just like writing a bunch of stuff. And it was eventually written. So one day when it gets produced, hopefully I'll get paid. So
there we go. Yeah. Well, like I'd imagine as well, like returning to what you're doing, like your line of work and probably encountering people who are doing these types of things. Does that sort of like inspire you to kind of dip your toes into it again a little bit more? Or
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I got lucky. There was another one, like I actually did an ad for Electrolux fridges back in Singapore, and that ad was obviously short for one market, but ended up being used for 4 or 5 markets because I just had it was just such a great work that I did. But no, I mean, it was a fun ad. It was actually written by a very good friend of mine, and I mean, the ad did really well. And sometimes it was actually a lot like being a diva on the set. I wasn't really a diva, but also like, what's the male version of a diva? I guess a diva still. But regardless of it, I think it's just something fun, and it's kind of like a nice hobby to have more than anything else. So I sometimes I joke about it as well when we are filming, doing productions, and we're looking for castings. I'm just like, put my name, like, oh, by the way, like, just saying, it's free.
Exactly. All right. I'll be keeping an eye out. But yeah. All right, Rish. Well, I think we're heading around the bend here, and often to this last segment here, something called a crystal ball segment. As the name implies, we're looking towards the future, trends, predictions, so on and so forth. And we already kind of spoke to this point about social influencer marketing, changing just drastically. Even like 5 years ago, you think of a platform like TikTok, and it was just probably starting to emerge, and now like it's a must-have for brands to be kind of exploring, right? And not only that, I mean, it seems like we've spoke about this already too, where like social influencers themselves are appearing overnight out of nowhere, and again, wielding power. So it's just change. We started this conversation talking about all of this. So in terms of all of this, so like, what are some trends that you're seeing that are evolving right now? Is there anything that's kind of on your radar or on the radar?
Yeah, something huge on my radar, and I guess everyone's radar right now, and everyone's talking like it's the Metaverse and NFTs, the Web3, and everyone's kind of talking about it. We're all as an industry kind of like trying to like get our heads around it in a lot of ways, and especially it relates back to influencer marketing also in a lot of in a lot of ways actually as well, because you're like, I always say this, like, we were in a creator economy, which is also like what we call a sharing economy. But now we're going more into the shareholder economy, because the value of the content that brands are doing, what influencers are doing, is now changing, because your value is not just the number of shares that you get. You can actually create like that. A piece of content can literally be bought now. Like the Twitter CEOs, the first ever tweet that was done was sold as an NFT. Obviously, the value has gone down now, but it was sold. Essentially, there's a LeBron James dunk video that was also sold as an NFT. So think about it this way: any kind of content that you're actually doing, there's a potential, if there is a certain amount of value to it, if there's something unique about it,
right?
Yeah,
there's a community that's supporting it, is into it. I mean, it's no different than anything else, really, is it? I mean,
And I think like a lot of it's really the time for creators in so many ways, because if you can create something, and like artists especially, like if you can create something that is unique and interesting, like you can sell your simple artistic work that you did last night for thousands of dollars because the value of that has completely changed. And then anything that you produce, your value completely changes, and you're making money instantly as well, or making coin instantly as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the future is growing towards. And I think a lot of people are actually trying to change that, not just in Japan, but also like around the world. But I think that's where, 2 to 3 years down the line, if you look at award ceremonies, especially in advertising realm, you'll notice a lot of the work that is being done will have that in place. Like, because we're just now trying to understand the metaverse, or kind of understand. I mean, it's almost like, I know this is a bad way of putting it, but like, back in the day, there used to be this thing called Second Life. For me, it's kind of like Second Life having a second life now, where like, everything's kind of new, but this like metaverse thing is like nice and interesting. And I think there is potential that it will have. Where it goes, time will tell. But right now, everyone's kind of dipping their hand, kind of like social media was when it started, and it's just like, maybe I'll be on Facebook. Let's see how that goes.
Yeah, it's been really interesting. I've read a few articles on it. I mean, it's been interesting in the sense where they'll say like the opinion will be that, well, brands are heading into the metaverse, but so far there's been not a lot of reaction. Just people within that realm just aren't caring. And then others articles are saying the exact opposite, like what you're kind of saying, like, well, it's evolving, it's growing, it's not fully formed yet, but brands have to get in there early to stake out their spot and to start learning at least, so that when things do start taking off, they have an idea already. So it's kind of distinctive sort of like opinions on it already that are already starting to take shape. And it's quite fascinating to be following along with.
So that's why, as I said, everything keeps changing in our industry all the time. So like yesterday I was thinking about something else, now I gotta figure out this whole new universe, so to say. And maybe a year down the line, this universe is old and there's something new that's come out again. So it keeps changing, but that's what the fun of the job is, where you're always on your toes, but in a good way. Like I say this, in my head, I never stop working because I'm always thinking about so many things. Like even when like if anyone wants to get into advertising or social media or anything as well, I think all I do is okay, let me pause. I think even when I'm scrolling through Instagram, and I told you I follow all these influencers, I'm watching their content because I want to learn what they are doing, how they are doing it. I mean, Kim Kardashian taught me what carpal tunnel syndrome was. I didn't even know. And I remember being in the office like, maybe I have carpal syndrome. Because I think my joints were hurting. Like, maybe she is right. And I believed it.
Oh man, yeah. No, I think you're onto something there, though, in terms of like that point of just continually learning and pushing forward and being driven by this curiosity. I mean, I've been doing this podcast for a little while now, and that seems to be a theme for people who are not only succeeding, but finding levels of enjoyment in their work. Is that it's striving to learn more and recognizing that things are changing and how wonderful that is, because it's keeping it fresh. It's forcing you to stay on your toes and learn and constantly learn. The moment you stagnate, the moment you stop doing all of that, well, that's oftentimes when the enjoyment starts to wane. That's when the success starts to go down. So no, I think you're onto something there. And
let's see.
Yeah. Well, definitely. If all of that, just doesn't work out, I'll be on the lookout for some of your acting work and maybe some CMs along the way as well.
Absolutely. Well, like I'm not placing a bet on that one. So yeah.
Well, Rish, I must say, I mean, it's been an absolute pleasure, and I feel like this talk has just flown by. I mean, I could ask probably like 20 more questions here, but we'd be here all night. So I thank you immensely for taking some time and joining the program.
No, thank you so much. It was a pleasure. It did fly by. I didn't even realize that it was time.
Hats off to you on that. For those interested in learning more about Rish and his work, you can find him on LinkedIn. And also of course, I mean, if you like today's show, please be sure to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you access your podcasts. And, share, in the spirit of this conversation. All of that stuff does count, and it does make a big difference. And also too, we did recently launch a channel over on YouTube. You can go on over there and check out that platform. And the interesting thing with that is we will have a visual overlay, a slideshow, if you will, of some of the imagery associated with the actual talk. So you'll be able to kind of take it all in a different manner. And when you are over there, you will notice, the show is fairly new on that platform. It does need a bit of love. So if you like what you're seeing, yeah, please hit that subscribe button. And then finally, don't forget to join us on the next episode of Life as where we'll continue to explore and unearth the details of professions and the people behind them. I'm your host, Christopher Schoenwald. Until next time, stay curious about life and living.